So for those of you who are joining us for the first time tonight, this is the Bridge Club. This is a critical conversations community where we bring together topics that are important for this profession. And we do believe it's important that we have conversations because that's how solutions are created. And tonight has been a conversation that I have been wanting to have for a very long time. I had an incredible experience at Super Zoo this past year where I walked in and they had this amazing groomer setup and they were having groomer competitions. And the gentleman there got on the microphone and he said, "We are the second most important person in a pet's life behind their pet owner." And I stopped for a moment and thought, wait, what? Is that true? And it just intrigued me so much because then I started thinking, well, heck yeah, they touch Lily, my dog, more than I go in and see the veterinarian. That's kind of interesting and important. Well, how come my veterinarian doesn't talk about groomers with me? And I wanted to understand that. So I have taken a deep dive, as you will find out, a pretty deep dive into all things groomer. But we did bring some experts along the way. If you are a groomer, a veterinarian, or a technician, you will be happy tonight to know that in the chat, I will ask that you all mute yourselves and use the chat as our primary form of communications. But we do have an award-winning groomer who is going to be in the chat with you this evening. And her name is Erin Meyers, and she also happens to be with the AKC Groomer Certification Program. She also, well, that's the master's program, and she's with the AKC Institute and the National Dog Groomers Association. So she's kind of really knows what she's doing, as the fact that she's a third generation dog breeder and groomer. So I just want to make sure that everyone, just thanks, Erin, for coming. And she and I are conspiring on several other things to make the world a better place for groomers. So I will say that she is awesome. So she is in the chat for any groomer conversations that need to be taken place. We also have Shannon Nowak, who many of you at the Bridge Club will know is our RVT, LVT. And then we have Dr. Cheryl Good, who is our Chief Medical Officer and also a practicing veterinarian to help answer any additional questions. But taking center stage tonight are two incredible people, both out of Wisconsin. First and foremost, we have Dr. Marty Greer, who is, though her bio doesn't state it because I happen to know her pretty well, is that she actually is the author of The Pandemic Pet. This woman took advantage and understood these pet owners needed help during that time frame. And so she wrote an incredible book. But I'm going to brag just a second. In addition to being a practice owner and an amazing veterinarian, Westminster has also named her as one of the Vet of the Years, or she's up for an award for it. And we all are going to vote on it and make sure that she definitely gets it. But for Vet of the Year by Westminster, I mean, come on, that's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about that. And then joining her is this amazing award-winning groomer and breeder herself. She has been, I can't remember here how many generations you've been in your grooming in Jackson, Wisconsin, which is the Cedar Creek Pet Resort. Is it family? Is it second generation? Is that what you are? Second generation, but award-winning as well. So we've really got the voice of the groomers to be brought forward tonight. It's not just the profession saying what's happening, because we do need to talk from it on both sides. So before we jump in, we are going to have a toast, and then I'm going to jump in with some great, interesting facts about groomers that you may not be aware of. Ah, Deborah Hamilton's here. Love her. So love to see you guys as you're coming in. So I'm going to quickly turn it over to Dr. Greer. Have you unmute yourself for our opening toast.
So here's to the serendipity of being in the right place at the right time and connecting with the right people so that we can make a difference in our pets' lives. It's not just about the veterinary profession, it's about everybody that contributes to our pets' health, and that includes our groomers. So here's to everyone here tonight.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
So I'm going to rattle off some facts that I found very interesting here. So right now in the veterinary profession, what are we at, about 180,000 veterinary professionals within the profession, 80 active, I think. And then we've got with the veterinary technicians, that number is probably a little bit more north. Kurt could probably correct me on that. But there are over 300,000 groomers in the United States, 300,000. And also they generate $1.9 billion a year in revenue, which is absolutely phenomenal when you start to hear about it. What I didn't know is that groomers see 81% of all dogs at least once a year. That's insane. That's better than what veterinarians are able to see with access to care. Incredible. Data on cats is harder. So if anyone happens to know the data on cats, love for you to share it. But I find that to be absolutely incredible. What we do know is that the average groomer sees with regular clients a pet 4 to 6 times a year. So they're touching and looking at a pet 4 to 6 times a year. The average veterinarian sees a pet owner twice a year, if they follow all their twice a year visits, right? So for wellness care. I also learned that during the pandemic, unless they were in a retail store, many groomers had to fight to be seen as essential workers. And I thought that was quite interesting as well, considering it was only if it was in the retail front, then many states started to allow it. But the reason why that is so critical is what we have also learned is that as the conversation in veterinary medicine and access to care start really boiling up, groomers are now being included in that conversation because they are in the overall circle of what is happening with pets. And the fact that they touch pets so often, they're able to actually help the pets. As pet owners are starting to decline the amount of care they're giving their pets in the veterinary hospital, I question, will they increase the amount of care they're getting on the groomer side? So this will be an interesting kind of conversation for us to be diving into. But people always wonder, well, why? Why aren't veterinarians and groomers working more closely together? 3 to 5% of veterinary hospitals have grooming within their practices, but the majority of them do not. And oftentimes veterinary hospitals will not recommend a groomer, or vice versa, a groomer recommend a veterinarian. So let's see if we can potentially change that. So I'm going to dive in with Dr. Greer and with Andrea. I promise I will stop talking. And I want to kind of figure out, what does the relationship look like right now in general across the United States? And then can we talk a little bit about, is there any kind of form of a current partnership that exists? So I'll first maybe go to, let's change it up. Let's go to Andrea. Let's let her go first.
So as far as a current relationship between groomers and veterinarians, unless I know of fellow groomers that work within a veterinarian office, I feel like there isn't much of a relationship unless you personally have a good relationship with veterinarians in your community. And I think that's something that a lot of us have to kind of do our own personal outreach. So unless, in my case, I'm a breeder, so I do have a good relationship with Dr. Greer. So I've already have that established relationship, but a lot of other groomers are not breeders. They're not active, involved in other things, and they might not have a close up relationship with the veterinarians in their community. So I think it's something that we could definitely work on.
So I would like to do a quick follow-up because I saw Nicole's comment in here, and this is an important piece. I think Nicole's comment is really important. Groomers do ask for all the shot verifications, correct, of what that is for the pet to make sure that the pet is up to date. But oftentimes they ask the pet owner to bring that, not necessarily seek it out with a veterinarian, correct?
It is actually not, because this will be a part of a larger conversation. Because we are essentially an unlicensed trade, it is not other than with exceptions of like PetSmart and Petco, private operations do not have to require any sort of vaccination records. It's kind of up to the organization or the business themselves if they want to require vaccinations. Most do, but then it's your job to keep those on database and organize those, and it can be complicated and confusing, and it's kind of, there's really no rules about it other than with corporate salons.
So Marty, why don't you dive in on how you view the rest, minusing from Andrea, because what we're trying to show everybody is that a great relationship can be developed, but at the same time, can you express kind of what you see the relationship with some of your other colleagues?
Sure, and I think groomers should be asking for vaccination records. They should be looking at pets on flea and tick control, because it's going to reduce the chances that a pet's going to pick up fleas or mites or, a kennel cough, any of those things when they're at the grooming shop. So I think clients understand that, but I think it perhaps isn't emphasized enough. One of the greatest things I like about the groomers is they pick up things that pet owners don't pick up. They'll find ear infections. They'll find skin problems. They find new lumps and bumps on the pets. One of the most interesting situations we had was a groomer that found an anal sac tumor in a dog's anal gland when they were doing the anal gland expression. And it basically saved the dog's life because a groomer found it much earlier than an owner would have. The dog didn't have symptoms. And so, we really have to count on our groomers to be our eyes and ears and to pick up these things because they see the pets when they blow the coat out, the hair sort of separates so they can see skin lesions. They can see lumps. They can find things, ear infections, all these things that owners have no idea are there. They're also really careful. They'll usually chart on the record where this little sebaceous cyst is and where this little lump is so that they don't clip it with a clipper. So they do a really tremendous job of being an extension of that pet's health.
So I do, Cheryl, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but you had made a comment when we brought this conversation forward that the pet owners are listening intently to the groomers. I mean, intently. How often do you hear from your pet owners about what the groomer has said?
Quite often, which usually it's great. They'll hear, from their groomer that there's a problem. The groomer finds a problem. And so they immediately, even before they pick their pet up from the groomer, they're calling the office and saying, my groomer found this, I need to make an appointment. So that's great. They'll bring the pet in and we'll see what we need to do. The only problem sometimes is if the groomer starts to recommend diets or the groomer starts to recommend certain things that are really not appropriate for the groomer to be recommending. But all in all, from my experience, I have great relationships with the groomers in the area of where I practice because they have really, like Dr. Greer mentioned, found so many things that I can then help my patients with.
So why does there seem to be a rub though? So let's dive into that just a little bit. And I would love for Andrea to talk a little bit specifically on the entry point into the profession. So veterinarians have how many years of training, Cheryl and Dr. Greer?
Usually 8 at the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And how many for a technician, Shannon?
I'm muted. Usually like 2 to 4 of schooling.
So education has always been something that's been really highly seen within, obviously the medical community. That's not pointing fingers, but what's the biggest challenge, Andrea, that we're facing currently within that relationship building?
Sure. And I think the struggle with that is that there are no requirements for education for groomers. There's no certification, there's no licensing. Things can vary state to state as far as what is required. I was just kind of looking at some research. I mean, some states you can just buy your license, and I mean, Wisconsin, we don't need to have a license. So it's basically, it comes down to we don't need to have any amount of formal education. Most of us, I mean, some people are self-trained, some people have gone through mentorship, some people have learned through groom schools, and some people have learned, through corporate practices, but there's no standard of licensing within the grooming community right now.
But I want to make it really clear. There's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of so can we talk a little bit about, so that's point of entry, right? So point of entry for groomers is I could watch a YouTube video and hang a shingle and I could do that. I would be horrible at it. My groomer is very good. But I would be curious, so talk about what opportunities are available to groomers and the type of education that they can be getting.
So there are lots of different levels of licensing and certification you can achieve. The National Groomers Association of America, NDGAA, and the AKC Master Grooming Program are both really good ones. And that's when you do practicing and licensing on different coat types, different breeds. You can learn more about the breed standards and then you can achieve your licensing on that. But that's somebody going out and achieving that on their own, and it's something that they can kind of add to their portfolio. But once again, it's not required. So, but that's something that a lot of higher end groomers or maybe competitive groomers like to achieve. It's not necessarily something that we see in the AKC confirmation world as much. We're pushing for that a little bit more, but competition groomers licensing is a big thing, and it's a thing that they like to achieve a lot.
So how can the general, like in a community, so if we were talking specifically about building a relationship and also the confidence of a pet owner and the medical community around, what should they be asking for from a groomer that won't appear to be, you know, what kind of credentials do you have? Like, how do we make it so that it's like a positive thing and they should be proud of what they've been able to achieve? How do we do that?
So I think, you know, at this point, if a customer is coming to a groomer, they should be asking questions. How long have you been doing this? How did you learn? Where did you learn? What other things do you do with, you know, dogs, cats, animals? Did you grow up on a farm? Are you a breeder? You know, what are your relationships with your veterinarians in the community? You know, are you, you know, are you certified in any sort of way? Do you have a portfolio of pictures? You know, reviews are kind of not very reliable, but I mean, you know, so I think it's just kind of one of those things at this point, you have to take it at face value. So that can get kind of tricky.
Well, I would love for groomers to brag. I would love for them to brag about the amazing amount of investment they've made, because these trainings are not free, correct?
No, they're not. They can be very expensive.
So from that perspective, I feel like just like you have, and not to pick on Dr. Greer or Dr. Cheryl, but the fact is they're very proud of their doctor and their DVM behind their name, and rightly so should they be, as well as Shannon with their RVT, LVT. Love to be able to have that kind of licensing credentialing out there for groomers to help set them apart. Is there any movement whatsoever to standardize this, or in order? You and I had a brief conversation with regards to the licensing and credentialing, because it's kind of like medical, right? Veterinary medicine. It's a hodgepodge for our technicians all across the United States. But is there any movement for that to be changing in grooming?
So there is not necessarily a movement per se in action. I believe, and Erin, I would love to join on the conversation on this, but I believe what the AKC is trying to do with the AKC Master Grooming Program is getting ahead of legislation, because I think we're all becoming very aware that legislation and certification requirements for groomers is coming. It's going to happen. So what the AKC, I believe, is trying to do is that they're trying to get ahead of the game so they can make the rules for the groomers instead of, you know, lawyers and legislation making the rules for us, people that don't know anything about, you know, the animals and the things that we are working with in the grooming salon. So I believe that is what the AKC's plans are. Erin probably knows a little bit more about that, but there's no. Go ahead.
Yeah, we are working on, we have standards and practices in place with the AKC Safe Groomer program. You can find information on that at akc.org or Canine College. You know, we aren't pushing to promote legislation, because anytime you start legislating, then that starts setting up barriers. But we do want to have those standards and practices in place in case legislation begins to move in that direction. So at least, you know, that we can say, we've built this program, we've built it for groomers, and it's ready to go. And you guys don't, like you said, need to bring in lawyers and people that don't know anything about dog grooming. You know, what's scary is of course we want education. We think everybody needs to be educated. It's better for the dogs, it's better for our clients, it's better for the groomers. But it's still a trade, and you can't, the minute you put a certification requirement on it, you put a bunch of people out of business right away. And so if there's an instance in where we could put a timeline and say, like, listen, by year 2025, you need to have a license in place, great. You know, and the thing about groomers is it's more of like an artist culture, you know, they're a little bit more free spirited and maybe not as like, hit the books and stay up all night and go to vet school for 8 years. I mean, there is a difference in that regard. And I know that it's probably something we need to take into account. So yeah, I mean, we're trying and we support it.
Well, I will say that's been the key word I've learned in doing this discussions with you. I have also spoken with the PetSmart grooming folks as well, is it's artistry. And we need to take, and recognize that for what it is as well. But there has been times where, the technician, sorry, Shannon, the groomers have crossed over and potentially have caused some issues. I saw there was a comment about ear infections, not that, but rather, I believe is it scaling of teeth? Can we talk a little bit about that? Or I know there's also some challenges with anal glands as well, and expressing those and how to express those. So who wants to jump in on that little sensitive part and what that means for the relationship between veterinarians and groomers? Go for it, Marty.
I'm happy to. I think that's where some of the friction comes in, is when groomers overstep what grooming is. And I don't think a veterinarian has any concerns about a dog being having their teeth brushed by a groomer. And obviously brushing your teeth every 6 weeks when you're getting groomed isn't enough to give you good dental care. But we do see groomers that start scaling teeth, and we all know that scaling teeth can then lead to fractured teeth and to increased accumulation of tartar, because we're etching that enamel on the tooth and it's not being smoothed out by a dental cleaning and a prophy. So I think that's where it starts to become a rub. And like somebody mentioned earlier, making recommendations on food and things like that. So I think as long as we have pretty clear barriers on where grooming ends and veterinary medicine starts, I think we can all get along really well. I think we need to have a groomer needs to have a veterinarian on speed dial, because invariably there's going to be something that happens at a grooming shop, that a dog has some kind of an injury. I honestly don't understand how groomers do their job as well as they do, because those dogs don't sit still. For us at the veterinary clinic, I don't know how the groomers don't nick the dogs more often. You zig, the dog zags. I don't know how they don't, have more accidents. And I'm totally impressed by the ability of a groomer to take a dog that in our veterinary clinic is difficult, takes 2 people to handle. And somehow this groomer has this magical ability for the dog to just be this angel in front of them. So I'm really impressed, but we have to be pretty clear with where those lines are drawn. And I think if we do that, we can have good relationships.
So just for argument's sake, as people are, dialing in, listening into this, why is it not good to give a nutritional recommendation when you're the one looking at the skin and you're seeing the skin and issues that are happening with the coat, et cetera? Why is that not something that should be in a groomer's portfolio of education?
I'll go again. Well, in spite of what the general public believes veterinarians have for an education about nutrition, because we hear this all the time, well, you never had a nutrition class, or the only nutrition is taught to you from the pet food company. That really isn't true. We understand the physiology of renal function and kidneys and skin disease and all those things in a way that without 6, 8, 10 years of education, you're not going to really have the foundation that you need to make some of those recommendations. And I see a lot of nutritional issues in reproduction, in overall health. And so I think that we have to understand that veterinarians do have a good foundation of knowledge on how nutrition impacts the pet's health.
So let's talk about the anal glands. I bring this up because of conversations I had. So I see that Dr. Cheryl is like, no, they can. I think it's the way that the glands are expressed that seems to be the question on that one. So can we talk a little bit about expressing of anal glands?
Sure,
Yeah.
I can.
Cheryl, go for it.
Cheryl,
Oh, I just wanted to mention, when I talk to my clients and they ask me about anal gland expression and going to the groomer, I said the groomer does express anal glands, before they get into the whole grooming process, because they don't want to have them express them and ruin the whole ambiance afterwards. But it's my understanding that they express externally, because once you go inside that rectum to express them, that should be, a licensed veterinary, licensed RVT, LVT to do that, or a veterinarian to do that. I don't think it's proper for a groomer to do internal expression. Is that true? Is that Andrea?
Yes, it is true. We don't do any sort of internal expressions. A lot of owners do ask for us to do external expressions, probably because it can be cheaper for us to be doing it while we're grooming it instead of making an appointment at the vet and having them do it at a separate appointment. It is something that personally at our shop, we do external expressions. It's not something that I recommend. It's something that I will do for dogs that have had it done previously, but if it's a new client and they're asking me about it, I will ask them to ask their vet about it first. I can, bathe the dog, put it in the tub and feel if they're swollen, and then, tell the owner my observations for them to tell their vet, but it's not something that I generally like to do. I mean, it's something that you can look at and see if there's, if there's major issues in the area where you can make your observations and relay those to the owners, but it's not something that I feel like we should be doing as far as internally.
Are there any other topics that have caused kind of the friction? I know those two have been like or three, I should say, nutrition, the teeth, and the glands. Is there any other big one that comes from the vet? Because then we're going to flip it over and let the groomers go, here's what makes us mad.
So can I just mention something that I actually saw today?
Sure.
This is just one of my patients came in, had been to the groomer week before, the day of the grooming, the dog started having issues with an eye, and I guess the groomer told the owner that there was a hair in the eye, and so they flushed the eye out. Is that something routine that a groomer would do? Would flush the eye out? Because I was a little nervous about that and wondered, if the groomer doesn't routinely flush an eye, that could have been flushed a little too hard, and then could have, because the dog ended up having a horrible ulcer, a corneal ulcer, and I can't imagine that would have happened just from having a hair in the eye.
I would say that it's not a normal practice. Obviously, things happen with, squirmy dogs with dryers and brushes and dogs scratching at their face. So things do happen, scratches do happen. But then, that's something that if you say, oops, it looks like there's something that did happen, there's something that's wrong, that it's something that you need to refer to a vet. But I would say that flushing the eyes is not something that I would recommend to do, and that could cause further damage.
Right, which is what I'm suspecting happened, but yeah, I can't, I didn't want to say it to the owner.
Sure, and beyond maybe, rinsing the face with more water, but beyond that, because even shampoo can be damaging to the eyes.
Right.
So beyond just simple water of the face, that's not a normal practice.
Okay.
I just find this also fascinating. I hope you all are having as much fun as I am, because I've just been wanting to have this for so long. I do kind of want to turn this to both Erin and to Andrea and flip it. So we're talking about the veterinarian's relationship with groomers. Obviously, honest to God, veterinarians and practices rely on groomers without even knowing it, because they are referring people back into practice. So it's a great relationship that has never been really maximized. We will talk a little bit about how Dr. Greer has maximized that a smidge, but let's talk about some of the potential challenges from the groomer side to the veterinarian. So can we talk a little bit about what that looks like? Andrea, when you and I first met, you had mentioned about the need to just be recognized, but can we dive into kind of the challenges that groomers also are facing with the veterinary community?
Sure. So when I just talked with the girls in my shop about this and asked them what their major challenges were, because I honestly have a really good relationship with my vets and I don't have any major issues, but I wanted to see what other people's opinions were. And the biggest one amongst the community that I found was that groomers feel that they're being unfairly blamed by vets for causing harm. We get a call from the owner saying, I took my dog to the vet and the vet says that you injured the dog, you did some sort of harm to my dog, it's your fault, now you have to pay. What I have found in my personal experience is that usually is not true at all. What I will do is I will go ahead and call Dr. Greer and say, Dr. Greer, this owner called and said, is this true? And I would say 9 times out of 10, Dr. Greer hasn't even seen the dog. And it's just somebody that's upset and something's wrong. But it's just a lot of, it's the blame game. And I think with groomers being an uneducated community, that the blame easily kind of lands on our shoulders a little bit, because the vet says something, there's a license behind their name, and it's easier for that to be kind of the trusted person in the whole scenario. So I feel like that is a situation that a lot of groomers are frustrated with.
So I would love to have us do, I'm going to have you, Erin, actually answer this, but I would love to have a survey done of the trust between don't get mad at me, Cheryl and Dr. Greer, the trust between a veterinarian and their trust level with their groomer. I would love to see what pet owners, I just think that would be fascinating to see what they would say. Okay, Erin, what would you say is some of the biggest challenges that groomers are also facing? And folks, by the way, feel free to be, I love all the dialogue. If you've got any questions that you want us to also bring forward, please bring those forward. I love all the dialogue.
I'm just going to say, I think that, like, I'm going to touch back on what Andrea was saying about, you know, us not feeling supported by veterinarians. You know, accidents happen, and in the event that we need to send something to the vet, I think sometimes there's an assumption that we weren't doing our very best job to make sure the accident didn't happen. Even if it's damage to an eyeball, or, you know, you cut a nail too short or something happens. I mean, if you think about the sheer amount of dogs that go in and out of a grooming shop a day, you know, statistically, there's going to be accidents. So I would say that, like, just have a little grace with some groomers and understand that, like, you know, it's a 80-pound animal that we're also fighting with. Sometimes you guys struggle to find a vein, and we're having the same issues. So, and I think as far as trust goes with owners, you know, like you said, they do see groomers more often than they see their vet. You know, a lot of times I'll see owners have a better relationship with the vet techs than the vet. So I don't think that's something that you guys are already unfamiliar with. It's just the nature of how things work. So I think, I do think that we really do want support on both sides.
So let's dive into that. Keep bringing in the questions as you guys have them, but let's talk about how this bridge can be built more firmly. Obviously, Dr. Greer, you and Andrea have an amazing relationship. Can you talk about the functionality of your relationship? How does your relationship work? She mentioned she can call, but you also do things as well to work. And then we're going to talk about some other options as well.
Sure. And I have a great relationship with the groomers. I had a great relationship with the boarding kennels. And I think we all need to trust each other. And in general, that works really well. Because like I said, I am totally amazed every time that a dog comes in, how well they do with their groomer. Many people use their groomer dog after dog, decades. They have that relationship. And that is really valuable for the pet. And it's really interesting because if a dog doesn't like their groomer, now they don't have to like us because we put needles into them. We get that. But if a dog doesn't like their groomer, I kind of trust the dog to say, you know, maybe we should find a groomer that just fits your dog's needs better. And I do trust the dog. It's like if you take your kid to a daycare and it doesn't work out well and the child isn't happy, then I think you need to find a different daycare. So I think that that's really important because the dog can tell us things that, you know, and it doesn't mean the groomer did anything wrong. It may just be their styles don't click. But, you know, the better relationship we have across the pet industry, between the technicians and the groomers and the boarding facilities and the pet stores, the better we're all going to be able to take care of pets. And this whole animosity between different parties doesn't serve the pet or the pet owner well at all. So the more cooperative we can be, the better off we're all going to have. We're going to be thought better of. If you start bad mouthing anybody in the industry, it's a small world, and they're going to know that you're not groomer friendly or you know, other pet professional friendly. So we need to stay pretty well in line so that we're all helping that pet.
And I think, you know, I had an interview with Dr. Ernie Ward, and he talked about the pet paraprofessionals, and we keep labeling you all as groomers instead of a paraprofessional. And do you agree that that's a term that we should start using more often with regards to the circle of care around a pet? Tell me what you guys think about that.
Yeah, we started an organization in our local community before COVID, which of course was interfered with during COVID. But we started off with a speaker from a vaccine company that was able to help talk about infectious diseases. And we invited all of the pet professionals in the community. So they met groomers, that meant boarding facilities, that meant the pet stores, that meant everybody that touched that pet's life, because we have to all understand each other. And if the groomers don't understand infectious diseases and the boarding facilities don't understand nutrition, I mean, we're not serving our pets the best way we could. So the more educated we can be and the more aligned we can be, and we know each other, the better that relationship is. When I get a phone call from a groomer or a boarding facility and say, I've got a problem, we're gonna trust that they really need our help and that they didn't initiate anything that was underhanded.
No, I love that. And it's funny because, and I'm going to mispronounce her name. I think it's Tesha. I was going to say, we keep talking dogs. Can we do a little convo on cats? Because I saw the best video the other day of a groomer grooming a cat. And and it was interesting because she put little extra dialogue on there, round one, or whatever, because as the cat was starting and was amazing at doing this cat. So what can we talk about with cats, because they have unique diseases too that they can be seen on their skin as well. It's not the same as dogs as well. So can we talk a little bit about cat grooming, just like the challenges associated with it, etc.?
Who are we going to?
My two groomers.
Okay.
Oh my God, I don't know anything about cats.
Yeah, and I don't specialize in cats either. I do some minor grooming, cat baths, and a little bit of spot shaving. But yeah, that is definitely a specialty that a lot of dog groomers are. Brenda's in the conversation, and but that is a specialty that a lot of dog groomers aren't very familiar with, because it is so separate, and it's something that a lot of us dog groomers aren't. We kind of are a little scared of.
And I'll put it out there that cats can actually be kind of career ending for dog groomers because of the risks involved with them biting and scratching.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
that I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, we all know cats love water, so bathing them makes it a lot of fun. And a lot of cats end up with lion cuts and all kinds of other really short trims because they end up matted, and they won't allow combing of the owners. They don't let their owners comb them out. They don't let them brush. So it ends up being left to the groomer or the veterinarian to sedate the cat and do the grooming. So it is a whole different experience. And you're right, it can be career ending. I'm just glad cats don't come bigger than 20 pounds, because if they came the size of a Rottweiler, we would all leave the profession. If we had 80-pound cats, it would be not career ending. We'd be done.
That's incredible. I will say, I did also learn that many technicians do grooming on the side as a means to make additional revenue. This may be an incredible opportunity for the profession to unite. If an arm of our profession is dabbling so heavily into grooming, if we could be maximizing it, I think that's something for us all to consider. It is not documented how many, but it would be really interesting for us to know. But I do want to have us, because part of the Bridge Club is not to bring problems forward and say, wouldn't it be great if we all lived in a kumbaya moment? But I do think that both Marty and Andrea have given us a sample of open communication and what this looks like. And if we could we talk a little bit about, Andrea, if a veterinary hospital were to call you and say, hey, listen, we're putting together a list for our new pet parents that come in as of groomers. We are simply wanting to know information about you. What information would you recommend groomers offer up and make fully available on their website, as well as a means to be able to help educate veterinarians and to build confidence in them?
I would recommend the groomer to state how long they've been in business, if they have any certifications, what they are, if they are active breeders themselves, if they are in conformation showing, or if they're competitive groomers, what part of the trade that they are most active in, what they specialize in, if dogs, cats, both, if, small animals, kind of just the basics as far as that goes. And, if they specialize in pet trims or show trims, things like that. But I would stick to probably the basics, and then from then on, it can be a conversation between the owner and the groomer.
I'm going to say insurance as well.
True.
I think insurance is big. I also think making available if you do online appointments. And so I think that's really important, so that they could make that readily available to parents within their own practice. So if this is who we have. Most veterinarians are tentative to do a recommendation of, hey, here's a groomer we recommend, but they would be willing to offer a list. So let me ask the opposite question of, Dr. Greer, if a groomer were to call you and say, hey, we're a new groomer in the area, we are looking at veterinarians that we could, as people come in, we get people that don't have veterinarians, and we want to make sure, what was it that you would offer up and that you recommend all veterinarians share with groomers?
Well, I think having the combination of a grooming facility at a veterinary clinic is the ideal mix. We had groomers for many years in our practice, and then we gave them up because we needed the space to do some of the other services. But we've had a difficult time attracting and retaining groomers because, as I believe Erin said, they tend to be an artistic group, and so they have a little bit more of a free-spirited approach. But I would like to see their portfolio most of all, because I don't want to send a dog in for a grooming. Of course, insurance, of course, training, what their training is, what their experience is, but I would love to see how they do their groomings, what their outcomes look like, because I think appearance is a lot more important than we recognize. I've seen Andrea do some amazing grooming. She can make a poodle look like a Bedlington Terrier. Like, it's pretty impressive. It's not just the people that, dye their hair purple and make them look like a parrot.
That's fun. I like those too.
Yeah, it's really fun to see. But I think we need to be able to know that the outcomes, that the appearance of the pet is going to be suitable. We had a situation at our practice many years ago that a husband called and said, I need to get my dog in for grooming today. I'm like, oh, okay. I happen to be the one that answered the phone. I said, okay. Let me check with my groomers. Let me see. I said, what happened? And he goes, well, I started to groom the dog, and well, it didn't turn out well. I said, okay, that's fine. Let me check with my groomers. So I called downstairs, and they said, oh yeah, we can get the dog in. So the guy brought the dog in. He started to trim the dog, and it turned into just this train wreck. I mean, the dog looked horrible when he came in. So we took the dog, the groomer fixed the dog up. The wife came to pick up the dog, and she saw the dog for the first time, and she said, what did your groomer do to my dog? And I said, oh, whoa, back up the train here, sweetheart. I said, he didn't tell you exactly the whole story. And she said, what do you mean the whole story? I said, well, if you'd seen the way the dog came in looking, you would see that this is like an enormous improvement, because at least the hair is all the one length, and at least it's all neat and tidy and symmetrical. So you have to understand that your husband, he meant well.
Before and after pictures would have been great for that.
Yes, this was well before we all had a cell phone in our pocket, so there wasn't any of that. We all had film in our cameras back in those days. But those are important. It's really interesting when you see little kids, when they've dropped the dog off looking one way, and then the family comes to pick up the dog and the dog looks completely different. I've seen kids just break into tears because they're like, that's not my dog. They don't recognize it because the appearance is so different. So I think appearance is really important to our clients. And of course, the groomers know that, but I don't think as veterinarians, we think about that much, because we're used to, shaving for a catheter and shaving for surgery. And we don't really care how the dog looks when they leave. But owners don't feel that way when their dog is in for grooming. They want them to come home looking like, the Cocker Spaniel that they saw on Westminster, which of course, we all know that's not something that most people can live with.
Well, we know someone's up for Vet of the Year with Westminster. So I'm just going to say, That'd be Dr. Greer. If you weren't on that earlier, she's up for veterinarian of the year with Westminster. We're all going to vote for her so she can get it. So I do actually want to dive in a little bit deeper into this relationship and how to foster it, because I do think what's really interesting is it is twofold. What is it that groomers need to hear from veterinarians to be able to say, I will also recommend that veterinarian? Is part of that recommendation to say, we keep a list for our pet, for all of our pet parents that come in, love to have you on it. What is it that we can offer as a community? Could we say we have an open house and we will certify you in XYZ within our practice? What is it that we could be doing as a veterinary community to open our arms a little bit broader and wider to those in our community? Do you have any recommendations for that, Dr. Greer?
I know some of our groomers have been really tight with certain veterinarians that need to use grooming services. And so they have had their own pet groomed by the groomer, and that's made a difference in the relationship. I've never owned dogs that needed grooming. I've never had a dog that had a continuous growing haircut or hair coat. So I've always done my own grooming. But I think that relationship is really helpful if the veterinarian uses the groomer and the groomer uses the veterinarian. I think that bilateral relationship really builds trust. And I think there are probably some veterinarians that are reluctant to make recommendations because, like I said, appearance is important, trust is important. And unfortunately, every now and then there's a groomer that isn't trustworthy. And so I think that's just enough to give a veterinary professional pause to say, I don't want to endorse someone that I don't really feel I know well. Now, I've been in practice 40 years in the same community, so pretty quickly we know who the good guys are and who the not so good guys are, which makes it easier. But if you're new in a community, it's really difficult to ferret out the information that you're looking for. And
But I would also say, just if I could, Cheryl, you get someone who says, the groomer told me to come in. Do you ask who the groomer is?
Oh, of course.
And then,
of course.
and is there, if it's a positive experience, is there communication back to support? I guess what I'm trying to say is, how can we build a bridge where there's a bit more trust so that my fear is this. How many of you groomers have told the pet parent to go to the groomer, but you have no, go to the veterinarian, but you have no idea if they have. And
So,
yeah.
So Catherine, I want to just jump in really quickly because you called me out for a second, but so I've also been a veterinarian for a long time in the same community, and I have referred to a lot of groomers sight unseen, personally sight unseen, but I refer to them because I get so many recommendations from my clients. So I'm listening, I'm listening to my clients, and if they're happy, right? If they're happy and they see great results and they have a great relationship, then I feel confident. And I also, so I have a list, of my preferred groomers. And on that list are groomers that are beloved by my clients, but also groomers that call me when they get worried about something or they want to ask a question. So we'll add them on because I feel like they're great groomers and they're great people and they want what's best for their clients, who are my clients, who are my patients too. So yeah, I feel like it's just, I really like to involve the whole group, right? The groomers, the pet parents, and the veterinarian should all work together to have this relationship.
So I would love it if everyone could be given permission. Sorry, Dr. Gray, I'll give you 1 second. If permission to say it's okay to talk to each other and say that you saw, if you see something, say something, and everyone could be helping that pet parent. Dr. Greer?
One thing that I have done quite a bit is at Christmas time, I'll stop in the grooming shop personally. I will buy poinsettias or boxes of candy and walk in the door to the grooming shop and unannounced. And I get to see the grooming shop. I get to smell the grooming shop. I get to see what's going on in there. I get to see a lot of how clean it is, those kinds of things. And so that's kind of an interesting way to glean the information that I'm looking for is this a place I want to send a client?
So I love what Kurt said. Why isn't it on our medical records to find out when's the last time they saw a groomer? and who's trimming the nails and who's brushing the teeth. I know we get asked. So we go to the veterinarian and they go, and I should have clarified for those of you who need to know, I am not a veterinarian or a technician. So as a pet parent and I walk in and they're like, so when was the last time Lily's teeth were brushed? Well, 6 weeks ago. So I am that pet parent. I admit it. I am. Thank God for my groomer because she brushes Lily's teeth. Thank God. I know. So I'm just gonna go. I know. Oh, I'm getting the death stare from
Kirk's pointing.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks, Kirk. I don't have to now.
No, but this, I think it's an interesting of going back and forth. So when I mentioned earlier that the idea of the vaccination records, it is not required by all groomers to be able to do it. I had a beautiful experience where it was required by this, where we go and get groomed. But I said, oh, do I need to bring it in? Yes, you do, because we need the copy. But when I showed up, they had asked me also, who was my veterinarian. And when I walked in, she said, oh, I got it for you. Don't worry. And it was so sweet because she had made the effort, but she's like, I have to go through, make you bring it in as well. So everyone's all on the right page. But she said I was able to just quickly call and do it. I love that relationship. I want more of those relationships. So Dr. Greer and, Erin and Andrea all know I've had a dream because you keep talking about the artistry of groomers, and I have been in veterinary medicine for 25 years. And there's something that I want really bad, and I think it would be amazing, is if in fact there was groomers were invited to a veterinary conference. I think it would be outstanding to see, and to have a veterinary association actually provide additional credentialing for groomers. So I am happy to announce that is not too far off as a result of some of our conversations. I can't say how, but I'm very excited. I think it's going to become a reality. And we were in a position where we actually could start really bridging our two professions together more cleanly. So I want to make sure that we're leaving on that happy note. Any other quick comments? We are a small group, so if you want to quickly unmute and ask a question, now is the time, because we always end at the top of the hour. Candace, do you have one? Is where you turn out? Okay, go for it, Candace.
Hey guys, I was sharing some data in the sidebar there, Catherine. I don't know if you saw it, but the recent data out from Global Pet in March showed that there's just a huge shift in the way pet owners are thinking about groomers as being the most important information they can get on pet health. So the recent data was 24% for millennials and Gen Zs are seeing the groomer as a significant contributor. It's kind of shocking. I'll share the one slide with you because it actually shows the difference by generation. And it, the veterinarian unfortunately is falling sometimes with the younger generation when you look at their number one priority, but groomers are rising exponentially, as you can imagine. So everybody, I'm Candace. Sorry, I'm a consultant, but I worked previously at Petco for 2 years, and so worked really closely on how do we at Petco, work with our veterinarians, our groomers, and our store staff to make sure that pets were fully, engaged in pet health. And so I think at the end of the day, it's a notion of, how do you create that bridge, Catherine, but maybe there's even simple like tools like handouts or sheets. We did report cards at Petco that you could then document your concern. You could bring it over. They would know it came from Petco.
Well, can we all just get a little more tech savvy and link it all together? Because I'd be really happy if my groomer didn't have a card.
Oh, I was on the interoperability committee meeting today. I'll have to get you on that one too, when we're talking about how to do that from a technology standpoint. But anyway,
I love this. I was curious what your data was saying. I was unsure on the data point, so thank you for sharing it. It is really valuable. I mean, as we all know it in veterinary medicine, I'm sure you do in the grooming world too, that people are replacing the idea of having a child with a pet. So groomers are going to become even more valuable. And as our profession dives deeper into access to care, it is critically important that every person has the ability to have someone look at their pet. I do believe that there is some credentialing that we could be doing. Do I dare say, and I'm really going to probably make Shannon mad on this one, to the category of a veterinary assistant. Could we be having things happen with groomers that would take us to such a level where that paraprofessional is really enveloping that pet? But it starts with us first having a dialogue and communicating with one another. And this is hopefully the beginning of one of many first steps as we do it. Oh, universal health portal. Oh my God, Nicole, I love that. Wouldn't that be amazing? We can't even all get our healthcare on the same practice management software. So I love the vision on. That's amazing. Any other final comments? Oh, wait, go ahead. Go for it. Yvonne.
Sorry, I tuned in late. I logged in an hour too early and then I came in late. I'm in California.
Don't worry, you'll get the video. You'll get the whole thing.
Okay, perfect. So I'm not sure if this has already been discussed. It sounds like you guys are already kind of gearing towards this. But in the chat, I was saying that like my next goal is I want to enter an associate's program for vet assisting and take the licensing test for California. I'm a groomer of 10 plus years. I'm CPG certified. I'm CCE certified. And so I'm like working through all the different courseworks and continued education. And honestly, that's where my mind was going, is that I would like to see a combined kind of secondary degree or certificate offered through, vetted by vets, where it could possibly be known as like a veterinary medical groomer or just a medical groomer. Because what I do in California, I used to work in a salon for most of my career, and Petco corporate salons, they just turn dogs away if they're like too old, have disabilities, high risk, if they have diabetes, if they bite, if they even look like they're going to bite, they're like, you have to turn them away because we don't want the liability. So I started thinking like all these pets need care too, and they just need someone who knows how to handle fractious animals or delicate animals, or people that are trained to know what to do if you have a dog on your table and it goes into a seizure that Petco doesn't want to take the time to train us to do. And so that's where I started, the pet CPR courses and stuff on my own. So I actually went house call back in 2021. So I bring all my equipment to my clients' homes, and I deal mostly with dogs that are high stress, anxiety, reactive dogs that in the salon, they were like very bitey, couldn't get a blade on them. The owners couldn't groom them. But with me coming into their home in a relaxed environment, having an understanding of like dog body language, reactivity, how to do proper medical holds you would see in the vet clinic from me being a vet assistant, all those kind of things, I came with like the knowledge and the confidence, and the dogs can feel that, when they go to a salon and it's a first year groomer, they can feel that it's a new environment. They're away from their parents, and then the groomer's nervous, it can heighten the reactivity. And I've noticed that a lot of my clients that were completely unable to be handled in a salon do so well within the first grooming of me grooming them. And the parents are amazed. They're like, I've never seen her not be groomed without a muzzle, or I've never seen her be groomed with a muzzle and not be thrashing around and screaming, so I'm very excited.
This is amazing. You need to connect with me. I put my email in there because I think I can get you with some people that are doing some amazing things. But I want everyone to note something just really quick on Yvonne. If you scroll over her photo for a moment, you will see that she is proudly demonstrated what she is, and that she is AKC and all this. So in the world, and Yvonne's like, I am. But I would say, if I could ask anything of all of you, is be proud of who you are and show it off. I had no idea when this became a light bulb in my head last August that you all were not, a small smidgen of you have no certifications or licensing. The majority of you do. But I had no idea the caliber and the levels and how in-depth it can be.
Well, most states, I think there's only one state currently. I could be wrong because I haven't done in-depth research, but from what I've heard of other groomers saying, I think there's only one state currently that requires a licensing to be a groomer. Every other state requires nothing but a business license and insurance. That's all
Correct.
You have to have. And
yeah, we had talked a little bit about that earlier, but my point is I just want everyone to brag about who you are. Everyone be proud of being the groomers that you are, You do amazing work. Veterinarians and technicians do amazing work. And the entire goal of this is like, can we all think a little differently of how we see our business? If in fact groomers are driving people into the veterinary hospital, can we be doing the same back to the groomers, and how can we be looking out for the pet as a whole? So what I would really recommend is that we are really, working together as a means to be able to kind of help the profession. So what I would like to be able to do, I'm not sure, I think it's you, Andrea, right? Or is it you, Erin? Who's doing it?
I think Erin nominated me. I think her voices wore out from her little escapade over the weekend.
There was an escapade. Okay. So because we're at the top of the hour, so the important thing right now is for us to be able to raise our glass for our parting shot. And I hope all of you who have joined the Bridge Club for the first time to come to one of these, you come back again, and let's see if we can really change the world together for pet care. So go for it, Andrea.
All right, my toast is to encourage continuing education and open conversations. And I think I'm just gonna leave it at that.
You're here.
Cheers, everybody. I absolutely love this conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any of you who want and have big ideas of what we can be doing to bridge this, I've given you all my email in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm a big believer that we can build bridges together, not apart. So with that, guys, everybody have a great evening.